I'm showing you exactly how to know when your septic tank needs to be pumped because the 3 to 5 year rule does not apply to everyone. Hey guys, Luke here with Luna Environmental. Now what you're looking at on screen is a pump out of a massive aerobic septic system that is full of all kinds of solids and scum to the point where that liquid effluent, that liquid wastewater is not flowing properly in the system anymore because of the solid buildup, and therefore the entire thing needs to be pumped. Now before a tank ever gets to this point of actually requiring a pump out, our technicians do something on location called a sludge judge test. And really, this is just a solids test. We take a big straw, we put it down in each chamber within the aerobic septic system, and we expect to see more solids in the initial tank, that primary tank that catches everything from the house. And then we expect to see fewer solids as the water moves forward, ultimately in the pump tank where things get pumped out. That's where the liquid wastewater sits fully treated before it goes into the ecosystem. Now, when most homeowners ask the question, how much does my septic tank actually need to be pumped, you're going to get an answer somewhere between 3 and 5 years. The issue is that giving a calendar or a time frame on when a pump out is required does not take into account probably the most important factors that actually lead a septic tank to needing to be pumped out in the first place. Now, we have found that the two things that affect pump outs really more than anything else is, number one, how the system is being used by the homeowner or the people inside the house in the first place, and secondly, the actual size of the system. Now, here in Central Texas, we have a lot of aerobic systems that are around 4 to 6 feet in height, and they're somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 total gallons. Now remember, I said the sludge judge test is the only real way to know if your septic tank actually needs to be pumped. Not time frame, not guessing, not just looking at it. We have to get an actual sample of the solids in each tank. So here is what our technicians say they're looking for in each tank in terms of a solids level to figure out when the tank needs to be pumped. Number one, in the trash tank, in the primary tank, the tank that takes everything from your house initially before anything gets treated, this is where they say about 75% full or more. When we see solids and the scum layer combined making up about 75% or more of the tank, you definitely need to get the tank pumped out, because at that point, there's not enough room left in the tank to have that liquid effluent, that liquid wastewater, separate and therefore run into the rest of the tank to be treated. Now, the second tank is the aeration tank. This is where you see all the jacuzzi bubbles, you see the water moving. In this tank, our techs say that from that sludge judge test, they're looking for about 6 inches of total solids. Once they see 6 inches in that aeration tank, you definitely need a pump out. And finally, in tank number 4, the pump tank or the discharge tank, where that liquid effluent is going to finally be distributed, you are looking at somewhere between 4 and 8 inches of buildup depending on the pump type. Now you might be wondering, hey, why do you have solids in the final tank in the first place? Isn't all that supposed to be filtered out along the way? And the simple answer is yes, but inevitably nothing is filtered 100%. And so those tiny microscopic solids that are still in the liquid wastewater in that pump tank over enough time do build up to, again, making up 4, 6, 8 inches of total solid count when we take that test, requiring a pump out. Now, when we do a solids test and yank that straw up out of that nasty water, you're going to see that at first, it's kind of all mixed up together. So we want to keep that solids tester out of the water, let it sit for about a minute, maybe 2 minutes, and let all of that stuff settle. And essentially, what we're looking at, especially when we take a sample from that initial waste tank, the primary tank, is we want to be able to add up a rough measurement in inches of the layer on the bottom, which is that sludge, those solids that build up, and the layer on top, which is that scum. In the waste tank or the primary tank, we see that the sewage separates into 3 different parts. The scum is on top. It's made up of all the stuff that floats. Think about oils, grease, fats, soaps, things like that. At the bottom, you have the sludge, the solids, the stuff that sinks. And then in the middle, you have that liquid wastewater. That liquid wastewater is, by the way, what we want to move throughout the rest of the system. So as we take that vertical sample, you're going to see scum on top, water in the middle, and you're going to see solids on the bottom. All of it's going to look dirty, but when we sit and we let it start to settle, you're going to see that separation in the same way that it exists in the actual primary tank itself. And by the way, you can see our technician breaking up that top scum layer of this particular aerobic septic system pump out, because that scum layer in this particular system has gotten so thick and has hardened to some degree that we can't even suction out all of the liquid stuff and the solids unless we break up the top layer first. Now that's disgusting, I know, and this is an extreme situation, but it's a great example of how that scum layer builds up over time, and yes, even begins to harden. Now, how much does it cost to get your septic tank pumped? Well, here in Central Texas, depending on who you call, you're going to get a few different answers. But when we look at the nationwide averages, you can see the variance in price pretty dramatically. For example, the average national price is about $426. But when we zoom into specific areas, you see here in Boston, Massachusetts, there's an average of $339, whereas in Charlotte, North Carolina, we've got an average of of $889, more than double the average in Boston. Now, the truth is pumping septic tanks is pretty straightforward, and so a lot of what affects price is simply how many are available in any given area and the location of the country you are, how concentrated, how dense is the area of septic. Are there lots of homes on septic? Is there a lot of demand on all of these pump trucks? Are there only a few pump trucks in the area? Now, the big question for a homeowner is what happens if I don't pump my septic tank? The bottom line is if in any compartment or chamber within the septic tank you have too many solids building up, then what you are risking is those solids being pushed into that final pump tank and ultimately those solids being pumped out into your drain field. Your drain field, whether it's a sprinkler application area or it's under the ground, it's a leach field, and you've got little septic wastewater dripping through tiny little holes. Ultimately, if you get solids in any part of that, you can see how the system will start to break down. You can't push solids through a sprinkler. You can't push solids ideally through a pump or through a small filter. You can't push solids through a tiny PVC with tiny holes in the ground, leaching that water into the soil. And ultimately, the big expensive fix that we all want to avoid is having to replace a drain field, because once a drain field fails, it has to be replaced and it's extremely costly. Now, homeowners ask us all the time, how do I know when my septic tank needs to be pumped? Because I'm not going to be the one to get out there and actually do that real-time sludge judge test, because I don't want anything to do with my septic system because it's disgusting. And the truth is, the easiest way to be proactive about this is to simply be on a maintenance plan so that a technician is going out on a regular basis to actually maintain your septic system. It's the most foolproof way to do it, because the problem with septic tank pumping is that there are not a bunch of red flags that come up before your septic tank starts having problems and therefore tells you that it needs to be pumped. The problem is once you start seeing the symptoms, the problems have already occurred. For example, if you see slow drains through the home, if you're seeing gurgling toilets or gurgling sinks, if you've got wet soil or pooling water near the tank lids outside, if you've got strong sewage odor in the yard, if you've got backups into your home where you're using a lot of water, flushing a toilet and you see that septic coming back into the house, into showers, into bathtubs, or if you've got a high sludge level found during a maintenance inspection, those are all indications that you need to get your septic tank pumped. But only one of those is not a problem that affects you. And that is the last one, high sludge levels during an inspection. That's what tells the technician we need to get a pump out before you as the homeowner experience any of the actual issues. And like I said, when these symptoms appear, it's already an indication you've got problems. And that is why trying to schedule a pump out based on a calendar like every 3 to 5 years is risky. But for any of you guys who want some semblance of general pump out advice based on what we see and national averages, you can make a very rough and general estimate based on about 1,000-gallon tank size. So you'll have to adjust it based on your tank size. But based on a 1,000-gallon tank size for a family of 2, roughly every 4 to 6 years, for a family of 4, every 3 to 4 years, roughly, and for a family of 5 or more, roughly every 2 to 3 years. Again, there's going to be exceptions to that rule all over the place, but it is maybe a general compass so you can understand your system more. Now, before I shot this video, I asked a few of our technicians here at Luna Environmental to give me a few bullet points that they feel like most homeowners are not aware of when it comes to pumping their septic tank. Here's number one. One of our technicians mentioned that one of the biggest factors to septic tank pumping is simply gallons per day. Every septic system is rated for a certain number of gallons per day to be able to handle over that day period. But he said that in his estimation, based on all the septic system he treats in a day here in Central Texas, about 30% of homeowners are overloading their systems. In other words, they're flushing more wastewater into their tank than the rated gallons per day is supposed to be able to handle. And essentially his point is that in his experience, because of all of that overload on a tank, there's a lot of homeowners that are really surprised when they have to pump their tank more than they're used to, but this is often one of the contributing factors. The second thing one of our techs pointed out is that in many areas of the country, pump outs are actually required by law based on certain time frames. So even if you do have the general advice of 3 to 5 years, you do need to check with your local authorities, because in different parts of the country, in different counties, they require you to have a pump out, even if it's not necessarily needed for the system based on time intervals. Now, this third point sounds obvious, but one of our techs said, I just want to remind homeowners that if you want to pump out your tank less and less often, put fewer solids down the drain. Funny as it sounds, people who use a bidet instead of just using toilet paper tend not to have their tanks pumped out quite so often. Same is true when you're thinking about the disposal in your kitchen. Throwing things away rather than putting them down the drain is a very simple way to have a proactive hand in how often you have to pump out your septic tank. And the final point that one of our technicians made is just to remember that once you have solids leaving your septic tank and being pushed into the drain field or the application area, there's not much you can do because repairs are going to be necessary. And that tends to be one of the most costly things to do inside of a septic system once it happens, and it cannot be reversed. So ensuring that you understand where your solid levels are at with your system is paramount. All right, guys, that's a quick overview of septic tank pumping and how you as a homeowner can know when you actually need to pump your septic tank. If you got value from this video and you have a friend who's also on septic and they're wondering, when do I need to get a pump out? Or they're experiencing problems because they haven't gotten it pumped out, send them this video, hit the share button, text it to them, because they're gonna get value from this as well. And remember, here at Luna Environmental, our goal is to make septic simple. And from Luke here at Luna Environmental, I'll see you guys in the next video.